I think it'll be done soon. Take care of the rest. I stared in disbelief at the man in front of me. It had been several months since my father-in-law, Sam, started showing symptoms of dementia. His son, Luke, and Luke's wife, Rachel, were planning to abandon Sam and escape from this situation. Sam is a person who could be kind to anyone without discrimination. I, and certainly Luke and Rachel too, had been supported and helped by Sam numerous times. And yet, are they trying to repay kindness with ingratitude? Or are these two so heartless that they don't even feel indebted? The rising frustration and anger inside me left me speechless. I glared at Luke and Rachel, who were selfishly acting during this difficult time, instead of speaking. Unaware or unconcerned about my anger, they continued preparing to move out. I wanted to scold them for their lack of compassion, but before I could approach, they hurriedly left for their new home. Reluctantly, I returned to the room where my father-in-law waited. Despite being betrayed by his son, Sam had a smug look and said with a grin, "I've been waiting for this moment. My name is Catherine. I met my husband, Tim, through a mutual acquaintance when I was 40. I wasn't planning on marrying again, intending to live freely with hobbies and travel, but Tim and I got along very well. I was open to a common law marriage, but Tim was adamant about a formal one, so we went through the official process. Upon our marriage, I moved out of my apartment to live with Tim and Sam in their family home. Tim's mother had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving Sam living alone. The suggestion to live together came just before our marriage. Initially wary of it being for caregiving, I found Sam to be healthy despite his age. Tim and I felt capable of caregiving if needed in the future. Sam, knowing I might feel burdened, proposed separating our living spaces. He lived on the first floor, and we lived on the second, which had its own kitchen and bathroom thanks to minor renovations. This setup allowed for some privacy and was never stressful. Sam's considerate nature was a major reason for deciding to live together. Our life was not glamorous, but it was peaceful. Then tragedy struck. Tim suddenly passed away. I received the news while preparing dinner. It was a call from Tim's phone, which was unusual during work hours. There was an emergency responder on the line, informing me that Tim had collapsed at work and was being transported to the hospital. I rushed to inform Sam, who was usually watching TV at this time, but he wasn't there. I found him asleep in his bedroom. Hesitating to wake him, I left a note, "Tim has been taken to the hospital, I'm going there," and rushed to the hospital. It was only a 15-minute drive. But by the time I arrived, Tim had already passed away. The cause was a sudden cardiac event. It was attributed to heart disease, and it seemed to be classified as a sudden death. I was in shock, barely registering the doctor's words, and sat down heavily. How long had I been sitting there? I noticed a missed call on my phone. The call was from my father-in-law, Sam. Just as I was about to answer it, the call ended. I managed to regain a bit of composure and decided to head home for the time being. Returning home, Sam was waiting at the entrance. I hurriedly parked the car and ran towards him. "About Tim!" He looked pale. He was clutching his phone, worried about his son. I hesitated to tell him the truth. Inside, we sat down, and I managed to say, "Tim. He's passed away. It was sudden." I thought I should relay what the doctor had said, but I was so choked up that I couldn't find my voice. I was still struggling to accept the reality. Sam was shocked, but didn't press me for more words, sensing my state. We parted for the night to gather our thoughts and planned to talk more the next day. Alone in my room, I couldn't sleep, grappling with the fact that I'd never see my beloved husband again. Sitting up in bed for a while, I realized it was already bright outside. It was 9 a.m. when I checked the clock. Thinking he'd be awake by this time, I headed to my father-in-law's room. As I entered the living room, I found him already sitting in a chair, drinking coffee. It seemed he hadn't slept either, his eyes red and swollen. I explained to him about Tim's passing and what the doctor had told me as best as I could remember. Sam listened with a troubled expression and finally let out a tear, saying, A parent should never have to bury their child. Tim and Sam weren't particularly close, but they cared for and respected each other deeply. Tim's proposal to live together was likely to prevent his elderly father from feeling lonely. And Sam, not wanting to burden me, had hesitated to live with us, as I learned from Tim earlier. Prioritizing my feelings as his son's wife, Sam had always been a warm-hearted person after we started living together. Seeing such a father-son relationship up close, I felt a sharp pain in my heart for Sam, a grieving father. Although overwhelmed with grief, we had to proceed with the necessary arrangements as the bereaved family. We divided tasks like contacting relatives, arranging the funeral, and handling paperwork. After the funeral, Sam and I arrived at the house. Then, as my father-in-law started to say that he had something to discuss, I sat down in a chair in the living room. "Catherine, what are you planning to do now? Will you continue living in this house?" Now that Tim was gone, it was just the two of us. I sensed Sam's concern, giving me the freedom to live as I wished. But like Tim, I deeply respected Sam. "If it's not a bother, I'd like to keep living here. It's full of memories with Tim." "All right then, let's continue on together." Sam smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling. And so, our life as two began. The void left by Tim's absence would never be filled, but we managed to maintain a peaceful life. One Sunday morning, someone visited our house. Typically, Sam would answer since the entrance was on the first floor. That day was no different, but soon after, I heard Sam's agitated voice. Descending the stairs, I saw Tim's brother Luke and his wife Rachel standing with large bags. "What's all this about? And those bags?" "We're moving in here from today. Thought it'd be tough on you both," Luke said, stepping into the house as if it was the most natural thing. I greeted them and followed them into the living room. Sam, sitting opposite Luke, asked in a low voice, "What's this about moving all of a sudden?" I had only met Luke and Rachel a couple of times, at our wedding dinner and recently at Tim's funeral. Tim had once mentioned their distant relationship, saying they rarely visited since Sam started living alone. "Well, with Tim gone and Catherine alone to take care of you, I thought as your real son, I should help." I was surprised, having sensed their strained relationship. Sam didn't brighten up, but didn't turn them away either. "You could have at least given us a heads up. What do you think, Catherine?" Luke and Rachel planned to live with Sam on the first floor, which wouldn't be much of a burden on me. Though slightly uncomfortable with their sudden decision, I saw no reason to object. The change in Sam started about 3 months after we began living as a 4-person household. He started misplacing things, repeating the same conversations, and occasionally became irritable or withdrawn. And then, my father-in-law, who had always been calm, began to raise his voice like a different person and suddenly became sullen and stopped talking. Suspecting something, I searched online and found his symptoms matched dementia. The realization shook me. Sam, always healthy and gentle for his age, had changed so drastically. I closed my laptop, taking a deep breath. When I married Tim and decided to live together, I was prepared for eventual caregiving. But that was with Tim by my side. The rapid progression of Sam's condition filled me with a sense of urgency. I attempted to take him to the hospital, but he seemed to be in a bad mood. "Sam, let's go to the hospital, just to check. It'll be quick." "Shut up! I'm not going to any hospital. What are you trying to do?" He snapped back furiously, making me flinch. Intimidated by Sam's forceful tone, a reminder of his masculine vigor despite his age, I couldn't muster the courage to insist further. During the weekdays, I work from morning to evening. In my absence, Rachel, a stay-at-home wife, and Luke, on his early return days, would look after Sam. On my days off, I spend the entire day with Sam. Several months have passed since symptoms suggestive of dementia appeared in Sam. His forgetfulness worsened rapidly, often asking for meals right after eating or taking multiple showers a day. This drastic change in Sam saddened me, while my concern for him grew. Perhaps there could be some effective medication or treatment. Leaving it unaddressed, his condition might worsen, making it even more difficult to take him to the hospital. I decided to discuss with Rachel and Luke, who happened to be at home, about taking Sam to the hospital. "Can you help me take Sam to the hospital? I think he might listen if we all try to convince him together." "Well, maybe it's okay as it is." Rachel's response surprised me. Because whenever she interacted with Sam, who showed symptoms, she visibly showed her displeasure. Despite moving in under the pretense of helping with caregiving, when I saw Rachel and Sam together, she seemed bothered. Wouldn't taking Sam to the hospital and getting professional care make things easier for Luke and Rachel? Their hesitant response to my proposal made me uneasy. "But we won't know if it's really dementia unless we take him to a doctor." I pressed on, and finally, Luke and Rachel reluctantly agreed to help take Sam to the hospital. We planned to go a week later when everyone was off. On that day, I woke up early, stretched out, and braced myself. Going to the hospital would mean a diagnosis. There was so much I wanted to ask the doctor about coping with dementia, caregiving, and its progression. Though I felt anxious about caring for Sam alone since Tim's passing, I wanted to join forces with Luke and Rachel to support Sam, who had been so kind to us. With these thoughts, I headed downstairs. Instead of entering the living room on the first floor, I went straight to the front door to fetch the newspaper that Sam reads every morning. Previously, he would get it himself, but since the onset of dementia, someone in the family always did it for him. As usual, I opened the door, but the scene outside was different. A moving truck was parked in front of the house, and Luke and Rachel were busily loading their belongings. "What's this? What's going on?" Hearing my voice, Luke and Rachel noticed me. "We're moving out. Our own house is ready," Luke said nonchalantly, and I was in utter confusion. Today was the day we had promised to take Sam to the hospital. "To be honest, we always intended to move out, so whether Sam goes to the hospital or not doesn't really matter to us," Rachel added. So that's why Rachel reacted unexpectedly when I asked for help to convince Sam. They were planning to move out anyway. It dawned on me that moving into our house had been a temporary arrangement until their house was completed. Anger built up inside me towards these two, who had shown up unannounced and now were leaving for their own selfish reasons. "What about Sam? Are you going to leave him in this condition?" I asked angrily, but they showed no remorse. "You can continue caring for him, Catherine. You've been living together, so you should manage." "But the situation is completely different now. It's cruel to just abandon him," I protested, hoping they would at least help me take him to the hospital. The thought of taking Sam, who became irate and violent at the mention of the hospital, was daunting for me alone. My pleading fell on deaf ears as Luke and Rachel remained indifferent. Then, Luke said something unbelievable. "Well, he's probably gonna kick the bucket soon anyway. The rest is up to you." Stunned, I watched Luke turn his back on me nonchalantly. I never imagined Luke could be so callous towards his own father. Especially since Tim had passed away less than a year ago. His insensitive remark furrowed my brow in disbelief. Ignoring my shock, they just drove off in the truck. Left standing there dumbfounded, I remembered Sam inside and hurried to the mailbox to get the newspaper. Still bewildered, I knew my life with Sam would continue. I resolved to somehow take him to the hospital alone and care for him no matter what, clutching the newspaper I had just picked up. As I entered the living room on the first floor where Sam was likely waiting, I was surprised to see him sitting and drinking coffee. This was unexpected because Sam's dementia had progressed to the point where he couldn't even make coffee for himself. He was sipping his coffee quietly, looking like his old, calm self before dementia. After a quick glance at me, Sam grinned. "They finally left, huh? I've been waiting for this moment." Confused, I just stared at him. The more I observed, the more he seemed like his old self. He beckoned me to sit down in the living room, and I obediently took a seat. Sam then stood up and prepared a cup of coffee for me. "Thank you." "Well, Sam, about..." I stammered, unsure of what to say. Sam, observing my confused state, gave a mischievous smile. Sorry for all the trouble I've caused. How was my acting? Acting? I was utterly shocked. As I sat there stunned, Sam, smiling broadly, explained everything. It all started a few days after Tim's funeral. Luke had proposed to Sam to live together to prevent me, Tim's wife, from shouldering the caregiving responsibility. He and Rachel would take care of him instead. Concerned about me, Sam had agreed and moved in with them. However, Luke and Rachel claimed they had no money, so Sam ended up paying for their new home in full. He had planned to eventually tell me about this and hand over this house to me. But when Luke and Rachel moved in, Sam felt something was off. His suspicions were confirmed when he overheard a conversation between Luke and Rachel.
Are you sure we won't get caught for leaving Sam and moving out? Of course. We'll live in our nice new house, and Sam's paid for it anyway.
They had planned to make Sam pay for the new house and then find an excuse to live there alone. Sam was initially happy to live with his estranged son, but felt betrayed when he realized it was a deception. Just imagining it makes my heart ache, and I think it must have been even more painful for my father-in-law, who was directly involved. Despite his heartache, he still wanted to believe in his son. He pretended to have dementia, hoping to test their conscience. The result was disappointing. Rachel started to despise and mistreat Sam with his supposed dementia. And Luke, his own son, showed no concern or care. Sam had resisted going to the hospital, fearing his act would be uncovered. Overwhelmed with all this information, I realized that Luke and Rachel had cold-heartedly deceived Sam, who had been so kind to them. To my astonishment, Sam said, "I won't show any mercy to those heartless two." "No mercy? What are you planning to do?" "Well, you'll see soon enough," Sam replied, hinting at some plan, but I was clueless. I had braced myself for solo caregiving, believing Sam had dementia, so this revelation left me feeling relieved yet bewildered. Sam apologized repeatedly for deceiving me, even temporarily, and for the trouble he caused. The reality of having the kind and gentle Sam back was increasingly clear. I was relieved that he wasn't ill. The following days, showing no signs of dementia, we returned to the tranquil and quiet life we had before. 1 month after Luke and Rachel moved out, Sam and I were still living together, maintaining a good balance of support for each other. Sam used to cook for himself, but recently his legs had been giving him trouble, so I started cooking dinner and we ate together. Today, being off from my job, I went shopping at a nearby supermarket and was thinking about tonight's dinner menu. As I turned the last corner and my house came into view, I saw a group of people gathered in front. Could something have happened to Sam? I rushed home. To my surprise, the commotion was caused by Luke and Rachel arguing with Sam at the front door. Could they be moving back in? Seeing their large carry-on bags, a sinking feeling hit me. Their loud voices attracted the neighbors, who gathered around to see what was happening. Luke and Rachel, frantic and indifferent to the onlookers, were confronting Sam. Worried about escalating the situation and possibly causing a disturbance, I approached and urged them inside. Ignoring my pleas, they continued their heated discussion, so I pushed them into the entrance and apologized to the neighbors before closing the door. "Let's calm down and talk in the living room." "Calm down? Are you even listening, Dad? What do you mean by this?" But Luke and Rachel were too agitated to listen. Sam listened obediently to my words and walked into the living room. In the living room, Sam sat down while Luke and Rachel stood angrily in front of him. "Sam, this is awful. How could you sell our house without telling us? We've been kicked out." "That house was built with my money. You two never intended to live with me," Sam retorted, and Luke and Rachel froze, shocked that Sam knew about their intentions. "You're mistaken. We were just settling down and we're going to invite you to live with us," they said, desperately trying to justify themselves. Sam, unfazed, looked at them with disdain. He revealed that he had accidentally overheard them discussing their plan to make him pay for the house and then live there alone. Disgusted by their heartless behavior, Sam had pretended to have dementia to test their conscience, but their attitudes only confirmed his suspicions. Today you seemed fine, so was it all an act? You deceived us. As an apology, give us the money from selling the house. Rachel demanded outrageously. I was astonished at Rachel's audacity, but Sam remained calm, waving his hands dismissively. I can't give you anything. It's Catherine who's been supporting and worrying about me all this time. I've decided to leave everything to her. Luke's face turned red with anger. And he slammed his hand on the table, making a loud noise. Despite this, Sam remained stoic, his gaze cold and steady. Enough. Then give us this house. It's crazy that a stranger gets everything while I, his real son, get nothing. That's impossible. This house is already scheduled to be demolished and the land sold. Sensing Luke's disbelief, I added, the house is in my name. It was decided after consulting with Sam. Luke was taken aback by my sudden interjection. The house, originally under Tim's name, had been transferred to me after his death. Tim had insisted on a legal marriage so that I could smoothly inherit his assets. Something I hadn't anticipated at the time but was now grateful for. Realizing they had lost both the house and Sam's support, Luke and Rachel stood in stunned silence. Family isn't just about blood. It's about caring and honesty, something you two have failed at. There's nothing left to say to you. Please leave. Sam said, his voice firm and resolute. In an uncharacteristically cold voice, my usually gentle father-in-law, Sam, delivered a final blow to the stunned Luke and Rachel. The two of them, previously so enraged, seemed to vanish into thin air. They shuffled down the hallway to the front door, and then I heard the door close with a thud. Half a year has passed since that last encounter with Luke and Rachel. I'm about to lock the door of my new apartment and head to my job. The house was raised and put up for sale, and Sam decided to move into a facility. He proposed this soon after Luke and Rachel left. Approaching 80, Sam is still relatively healthy for his age, but he's aware that his abilities are waning. He probably disliked the idea of burdening me with his care. Despite my insistence that he shouldn't worry about me, Sam seemed resolute in his decision. He still has savings, enough to cover the cost of the nursing home, so he expressed his wish to move there. We discussed it for a while, but considering the possibility of trouble occurring while I'm at work, I reluctantly agreed to his proposal. Fortunately, the nursing home Sam is moving into is near my workplace. Visiting him for about an hour after work has become my daily routine. Hi, Sam, how are you today? Hello, Catherine. I'm doing well, and you look great too. He now walks with a cane and seems much smaller than before, bent over with age. But his voice and complexion appear healthy, and I am relieved. As we chat in the meeting room, other residents pass by and greet Sam, who seems to have become quite popular in the home. Since then, I've received several calls from Luke and Rachel, begging for money. It seems their dream home has become a distant fantasy, and they are struggling in a small, old rental house. Their pleas, desperate and faint, find no sympathy in me. My consistent refusal eventually led to the cessation of their calls. Now, I look forward to my visits to the nursing home and enjoy my peaceful life in my beautiful apartment. I sincerely hope these days continue.